You're not lacking confidence, you're performing it. And the performance is costing you more than you realize. Hi, I'm Tami Imlay. I'm an executive leadership strategist and advisor, and this is a Leader's Purpose podcast. You're sitting in a seat where the decisions you make are visible, they're impactful, and felt by everyone around you. You carry the weight of the organization, and everyone around you knows it, which means they pull on you for everything constantly. And most of what you've learned and most of what you've been handed about leadership isn't wrong, it's just backwards. I've spent years studying what drives performance at the highest level, and every week I bring you what I've learned, the patterns, the reframes, the things that no one's saying out loud, so you can stop managing your leadership and start trusting it. You've already got what it takes. This is where you get to remember that. So let's do this. Before we get into today's episode, if you have not grabbed the Invisible Weight audio, this is where I want you to do. Well, I want you to go first, but listen to this podcast first because it is good. The six episodes, it's a conversation that you don't get from a LinkedIn post. It goes deep. We follow through, and you can see how one of the issues that one of my clients was having, how it became an issue, and then what we did to fix it. And you can see how easy it is to really understand yourself and your team. But back to our leadership myth series. Today we're in week 5 of the leadership myth. And so if you've been tracking with me, you already know what we're doing here, but let me just give you a quick recap. And if you haven't listened to them, go back and listen to them. But we first started off by dismantling the calibration myth, the idea that more voices mean better outcomes. Then we talked about clarity. Knowing more information does not always mean your decisions get easier. And we get honest about gut instinct. And then today we're going to talk about when confidence becomes a liability. So we named what your team is actually responding to. And then, next week we're going to wrap up this whole thing with something a little bit more personal that we all feel, but no one wants to say it out loud. So here we go. Here's into myth number 5. And know that this is one that as a young leader, it's one that I saw projected. Saw that it was even talked about in some arenas. But then now, as I'm working with senior leaders, as I'm looking, I can see how this myth is holding them back. So here's the myth. Leaders must project confidence at all times. You've heard this. You've probably said this, and I'm pretty sure you've thought it. So look confident, speak decisively, and don't let them see you sweat. And so you walk into the room and you perform it. The steady voice, the certain posture, the answer that lands without hesitation. And then when you get home, your brain won't stop. And here's what I want you to consider: that gap between the confidence you're projecting and the certainty that you're not yet feeling. Excuse me. That's not a character flaw. It's a signal. And it's telling you something worth hearing. So you already know what this feels like, but let me talk about it for a moment. Is that performance looks different for every leader. We all project, we all have different behaviors, different reactions, but the experience underneath it is remarkably consistent. So you make the right call. It was the right call. You said it with authority. And then you spend the next 3 days turning it over, thinking it through, asking yourself how it landed, and if you got all the information to them. Not because new information came in, but because something underneath that decision did not fully settle. Or you walk into a room and you know how to hold the room. You know what to do. You've done this long enough to know what composed looks like. But there's a version of you running underneath the composed one that is working overtime. And that version is exhausted. And then you've been told the answer is just have more confidence and fake it till you make it. More presence, more decisiveness, more certainty in your delivery. So you perform harder and the gap quietly gets wider. So I want to tell you about a leader that I worked with. Not because this is not theory. I've watched this pattern up close. And though I'm telling you one story, I can tell you dozens more. So I worked with a leader who everyone around her would have described her as confident. She carried herself well. She carried herself in a confident manner. She earned the role. She knew the work. And from the outside, nothing looked off. What she told me in our first session stopped me. She said, I don't want to be the boss that everyone thinks doesn't care. That's not a leadership problem. That was a performance. She's an Enneagram 8. And if you know 8s, you know that they can walk into the room and the room feels it. They're direct, they're decisive, they're capable of moving people and situations with very little effort. I like to refer to these types of leaders as the sovereign leaders. They like to be strong and they don't want to be controlled, and they push against limits and assert themselves not from aggression, but from a deep belief that vulnerability has a little bit of a dangerous edge and strength is the only reliable protection. She's been told, and many of my Enneagram 8s know this, that you are a little much or you're kind of bulldozy, but that's not a flaw. That is a wiring that at the right level is exactly what the organization needs. Enneagram 8s are amazing leaders because not only are they strong and confident, but they also look out for the underdog. They are incredibly emotionally attached to their people and because they care deeply. But she had worked for leaders who bulldozed. She had seen bosses who ramrodded projects or micromanaged or that came across as cold. And she had felt what that cost a team. And so she started managing her 8. She started editing herself in real time, pulling back, muffling the very thing that got her hired and got her from where she was to where she is now. Because she was afraid of what it might look like if she let her natural wiring lead. So on the outside, she looked confident. But on the inside, she was performing a version of herself that was only half the leader she really was. So once we got a full foundation, we could see that her instincts were not a liability, but they're not a liability to manage, but a system to trust. And then something shifted in her. She stopped editing. She started showing her team she cared, not by being the most confident person in the room, but because that was naturally, she didn't have to perform it, but she started leading and her team felt it before she even said a word. So that's not a confidence story. That's a calibration story. And there's a difference that really matters. So because performed confidence and calibrated certainty are not the same thing. One is going to cost you and the other builds you. So let's talk about this because the myth says that you have to project confidence at all times. What that produces is a leader who gets very good at looking certain. When you look certain, it doesn't leave room for creativity. It doesn't leave room for your team to rally behind, get ownership, and have buy-in. What it does not produce is a leader whose team trusts the decision after she leaves the room. You're not going to build that psychological safety when you're projecting the confidence. So that's why performed confidence is exhausting to maintain and it's expensive when it cracks. And it always cracks. Not dramatically, not even all at once, but in small moments where the performance slips and the room catches it before you do. Because here's what your team is actually reading. They're not reading your words. They're not just listening to what you're saying. They are reading the energy, your signal behind it. They can feel the difference between a leader who is certain and a leader who is performing certainty. They may not be able to name it, but they respond to it every time. So calibrated certainty is something different. And it's not the absence of doubt. And honestly, I think even like a basic level of doubt is really healthy. We shouldn't think we know all the answers. That's not really our job. Our job is to mentor and guide our team to come up with better answers than we can do on our own. But if you have all the information, then you don't leave room for creativity and opportunity. The doubt is what I'm saying is it's not a bad thing. So we're not trying to remove all doubt from our lives. It's not even possible. Calibrate certainty is the presence of foundation, is a leader who knows what she stands on, her wiring, her values, her diagnostic read of the room, and leads from that. Even when the outcome or the goal or the what's coming ahead is unclear. So the leader who stops performing certainty and starts leading with and from calibrated conviction does not lose authority. She gains it. Because the room can feel the difference between a performance and a foundation, and your team will follow foundation every time. Also, remember back when you were a teammate and you're looking at your boss and you want the opportunity to show them what you're capable of. And all you need is that one leader who is confident enough to say, "Hey, what do you think? This is an opportunity." And when you're trying to be confident and have all the answers, you don't leave room for this. So what does it look like when this shifts? This is where I want to take you. I want you to picture the version of you who walks into the room and doesn't need to manage how you land. Not because you stop caring, because you stop second guessing the thing that's already working. The decision you made on Monday still holds on Wednesday. Not because nothing changed, because we know that change happens all the time, but the foundation it came from did not shift. So your team stops waiting to see if you will reopen it, and they will just move. They will adjust, and they will keep it going. What about if you stop editing yourself in real time? The instincts you have spent years building get to lead. The wiring that got you hired stops being something you manage, and you start being someone you can trust and your team can trust. And that again is what builds that psychological safety. And this is not like a confidence upgrade. This is a foundation shift. And it doesn't come from performing harder or being more. It comes from finally seeing what you are already standing on, trusting who you are and the experience and your skills and your natural wiring that you've already been cultivating for years. So you've already led with more certainty than you have given yourself credit for. This is just where you get to stop performing the thing that you already have. So trust yourself and don't give into the lie that you have to be certain and you have to project confidence at all times. Before you go, I want to say something directly. If anything today's episode landed, it's not because there's something wrong with you. And it's not because you are missing a skill or behind where you should be. It is because you're carrying things that were right for a previous level that you have not set down yet. The instructions have not been updated. Your operating system did not get an overhaul or a upgrade overnight. And the order is off, and no one told you to check. We're taught to look for external solutions, books, trainings, podcasts, YouTube videos for internal concerns, for internal issues. When you understand the why behind your decisions and your behaviors, you have a new filter to run all this information that we're getting through. And that's what I do in a diagnostic call. It's not a sales conversation. It's not a pitch. It's just you and me. We're going to sit down or over Zoom for 45 minutes, figuring out exactly what is running your leadership right now and what gets to shift. Most leaders walk away from the call seeing something that they have been looking at for years, and finally they see it clearly. They finally see it from the right angle that they can do something about it. So if you're ready for that, the link is in the show notes, TamiMarieCoaching.com/call, and let's figure out what's in the wrong order. Well, all right, with that, I will see you next week. Bye for now.